Time for the big interview. I'm delighted to be joined by the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, from a country pile that we as taxpayers own. I'm sure it's an appreciating asset for all of us, Boris. I hope you're enjoying yourself down in Chevening. Foreign Secretary, if I could just start by...
Hi there, morning.
Morning to you. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I've just caught you. How are you, Robert? Morning.
Couldn't be better, and it's a great pleasure to see you. Now, if I could just start with this national insurance rise, was there a discussion among senior ministers like yourself before it was announced that this would be breaching the manifesto?
Well, we don't go into conversations that we have in Cabinet, clearly, and certainly not conversations before a budget. But let's be in no doubt that, as I think Theresa Villas has just said, and indeed Hilary Benn, you have to address the disparity in the treatment between the self-employed and the employed. And it was made very clear at the time when the bill to enact the lock on the NIC was put through the House of Commons that this applied to people in employment. And you know, you've got to address that. And I think it's very, very clear that this budget has got a lot of good stuff in it, particularly for those on low pay. It's raising thresholds, it's lifting the tax thresholds, and as Theresa Villas has just said, when it comes to the actual issue of national insurance contributions, you've got to sort out the disparity, but you've also got to look at the overall context in which you're doing this. You've got to look at the full package that self-employed people are getting. And as the Prime Minister has said, we're going to come back to that later in the year.
That's all very well, but then surely it was a mistake by the Chancellor to announce this before actually putting in place this package of help for the self-employed. That was a schoolboy error, wasn't it?
No. On the contrary, I think what Philip Hammond did was completely right. He's got some great things in this budget for people on low incomes. He's cutting taxes. You've got an economy that's growing strongly, and he's trying simultaneously to address a chronic problem that's identified by all serious commentators on the matter, which is the disparity in the tax payments made by those who are self-employed and those who are made by those in employment. What is going to happen now is that we're going to look at the context in which the self-employed are paying taxes and the benefits that they receive, and there'll be more work done on that before the bill to enact the provisions on NIC comes forward later this year. And I think that is a very, very sensible way to do it.
And very briefly,
when most people look at this budget, go on.
Well, just very briefly before we move on, this NI rise is definitely going to happen, is it?
Well, the Chancellor has made it very clear that you've got to deal with, and the Prime Minister has also made it clear, you've got to deal with an unfairness in the system.
I'm not sure you're saying it is going to definitely happen.
For sustainable growth. We will come forward later in the year with the provisions to enact what the Chancellor has set out in the budget. And as I say, I think most people looking at the strong growth in the UK economy, looking at the way that we're able to cut taxes now for the low paid, that this is an excellent budget that is going to create a platform, a strong, robust platform on which we can go forward over the next few years.
I think anybody listening to you, but we'll move on, is not persuaded that this national insurance rise is actually going to happen. But I want to move on to what the Foreign Affairs Select Committee said today, chaired by an influential Tory, Crispin Blunt. They say there is a very real possibility of there being no Brexit deal at the end of the 2 years of negotiations, and therefore we will tumble out and be subject to World Trade Organization rules on tariffs. Is that going to happen? Are we going to emerge from these negotiations with no deal?
I think that's excessively pessimistic of that otherwise distinguished committee. I think we've got every prospect of doing a very good deal between now and the end of the negotiating period in 2019.
Is that the most likely outcome? Is a deal the most likely outcome?
I do. I'll give you three reasons why I think it's very likely. First of all, as I was saying just now, thanks to the work of the Conservative-led government over the last few years, you have very strong, robust fundamentals for the UK economy. We're in a great position. We're about the fastest growing economy in Europe, one of the fastest growing rich economies in the world.
Right.
And
okay,
number two,
we've got number one.
We have a very strong and confident number two, got a strong, confident negotiating team being led by David Davis, and the people who are running this operation are absolutely first class. But the third thing, which I don't think people recognise, is that our partners and friends around the EU desperately want this thing to work. They don't want more misery. They don't want to fall out with the UK. What they want is, I think, what we want and what most sensible people in this country want, which is a strong EU connected in a new relationship of friendship and partnership with a strong UK. And that is what we can do with a great new free trade deal. I get that you're optimistic.
I get that you're optimistic, but the Select Committee, which you must agree with, says that there is a meaningful risk of there being no deal. And a politician I imagine you respect, Lord Lawson, said only last week he thinks there will not be a deal. The Select Committee says you have to do serious work preparing for the possibility of no deal. Is government doing that serious work, preparing Britain for the prospect that in 2 years there's no deal?
Well, I think that actually, as it happens, we would be perfectly okay if we weren't able to get an agreement, but I'm sure that we will, for the reasons that I gave. Don't forget, Robert, that we already have a situation in which our regulation, our regulatory framework, our system of tariffs, everything is flush with the EU at the moment.
Sure,
there is no reason on earth why that should not be protracted beyond 2019.
Are you contingency planning for no deal?
Well, as I've said to you, I don't think that the consequences of no deal are by any means as
fine, but but you've still got to prepare for it.
Some people like to pretend.
But you've still got to prepare for it, surely.
Actually, I think what you've seen in the budget from Philip Hammond this week, last week, the preparations for Britain over the next few years. We have a very strong, very robust economy, and we have the chance now to do free trade deals. We will have the chance to do free trade deals with countries that we have not been able to engage with properly for 44 years. You may not know this, Robert, but tomorrow is Commonwealth Day, and it is a stunning fact. Let me give you one stunning fact for all our viewers, both our viewers. It is a stunning fact that when the UK joined the common market, the EU in the common market back in 1973, it then had the 28 countries then had about 38% of global GDP. The Commonwealth then was about a quarter of that amount. The EU and the Commonwealth in GDP and output terms are now roughly at level pegging, and the Commonwealth is growing far faster. Now, of course, the EU is massively important for us and will continue
just to be absolutely clear, your erstwhile colleague,
we have the opportunity now to do new deals with them.
Absolutely right, but your erstwhile colleague Jim O'Neill, who is something of an expert on this, says there is no possibility of trade deals with the Commonwealth compensating for the trade loss with the EU. And he used to work with you, Boris, and I assume you think that what he says...
Robert, I know him well. I know him well and I admire him greatly. But as we say in Brussels, l'un n'empêche pas l'autre, mon vieux. There is no reason on earth.
Right, let's press on.
There is no reason on earth. There's no reason on earth why you shouldn't do both. You can do both.
Not disagreeing. We've got to move on. You're going to Russia quite soon to see your opposite number there. The Sunday Times this morning has a warning, basically a government warning, saying Russia is out to subvert our democratic processes by hacking the computer systems of our political parties. How serious a threat is that?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, we have no evidence that the Russians are actually involved in trying to undermine our democratic processes at the moment. We haven't.
So why are the security services making that precise warning?
We don't actually have that evidence. But what we do have is plenty of evidence that the Russians are capable of doing that. And there is no doubt that they've been up to all sorts of dirty tricks, bringing down French TV stations, undermining. You've seen what happened in the United States, where there's no question at all that they were involved in the hacking of the Democratic National Convention. You've seen what happened in Montenegro, where there was an attempted coup in a European state, and possibly even an attempted assassination of the leader of that state. Now, there is very little doubt that the Russians are behind these things, to say nothing of what they have done in Ukraine.
So what will you say to Minister Lavrov about this when you see him? What will you say to Minister Lavrov when you see him?
Our message is my personal feeling is one of deep, deep sadness, Robert, because if you think back to 10 years or so ago, the time when I was becoming Mayor of London, we were going through quite a good phase in our relations with Russia. We had huge investment coming in. We used to have Russian festivals in Trafalgar Square. We celebrated the friendship and partnership between the UK and Russia, and great Russian exhibitions would come to London.
I've just got time for one more.
It's sad that friendship cannot continue. So what we need to have is a twin-track approach. As the Prime Minister has said, we've got to engage, but we have to beware. And what
can I very briefly ask you one final question, because we are almost out of time. If I could just ask you one final question, which is, we've got this extraordinary standoff at the moment between the Netherlands and Turkey. What on earth is that all about? And is there anything we should be doing here?
Well, this is, I think, very regrettable, because they're two NATO countries, and they're both great friends of ours. And actually, my Turkish friend counterpart, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, just rang me just now, and I made it perfectly clear to him he wanted to come and have lunch with me. There was nothing to stop him. But obviously, this is something that we hope can be sorted out between those two countries as fast as possible.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.